Hello guys and welcome back. I'm hoping that it's not too advanced covering all this stuff with the rendering, but please do not get afraid of the rendering or this or this. We're gonna talk about this stuff a lot more. I just wanted to show how this in the viewport could translate in the render, because it's very hard to, if you're new to this field, it's very hard to imagine how this, not very interesting result in the viewport could result in something interesting in the render. And in fact it does most of the time. In the viewport display you get the motion, you get the basic idea of what's happening, but the final result you only see in the render, so especially with the motion blur. So it's very important to do quick test render, but again I don't want you guys to do any of that. So I want to show another example to create shields and things like that. You can create a NURB sphere. Let's increase the rows and columns, and going to create a texture, and this texture is going to be rows and columns, and we want the UV coordinate. Let's create a color node. I'm going to set it to ramp from attribute UV. Let's turn this off, and now we're viewing the UV coordinate. And again, I'm going to create a point VOP, and let's scatter some points. Turn off the seed. Cool. And let's dive inside and generate a noise based on the UV coordinate as always. Let's pass it to the color and change it to 3D. I'm going to add an absolute node because there is negative values here, but you don't have to worry about the absolute thing at this point. So let's increase the frequency. Okay. And let's use the offset. Ooh, nice. So the offset is doing a circular, is moving it in a circular manner. This is very cool. This guy is moving it that way. Very cool as well. So let's stretch the pattern like this, and let's play with the offset. Not so fast. Okay, let's export these guys and do different versions where you guys can understand what's happening. So I'm gonna do $F divided by 10, and let's hit play, and now we have something circular. Cool. Let's copy this and let's change the pattern to 10, and now we have something like this. Set it to 3, and I'm going to increase this so there is more repetition, and instead of this color I'm going to use one of these guys. So let's do a vector to float, split this into 2. So this is the radial one, and this is the height. Okay, let's do that. I'm going to change the viewport to black, zoom out, and let's add this. Let's deform the points with the result of the noise. I don't need the absolute anymore. Let's move this. It's too strong at the moment, so let's go back up and lower the amount, something like that. Let's hit play. So that's our energy field starting point. Okay, so this is one FX. Let's copy this, let's change it to 10, and let's change this, stretch it in that way. Okay, and now it's moving in this direction, but I want to move it the other way. I want to flip it and move it 2 times faster, and let's lower the intensity. Okay, let's merge these two together, and let's give each one a different color. points. Let's hit play. So now we have two different layers, one going up and one going down. Okay, let's continue with this. This is a great example for the layering. So let's do another one, something like this. And instead of it going up, I want it to rotate. So let's set this to 0. I want to keep that expression. I can do multiply this by 0, and that will keep it. That will always multiply it by 0. I don't have to remove the expression. And now we have this pattern moving along this axis. Now I can also restore some of that movement, but I want to reduce it by 20. I don't want it to move too much up. You can see now it's doing the swirly motion. I'm going to rotate it on the other axis because we like to see things moving in clockwise, I think. Yeah, this feels much more comfortable for some reason. Okay, let's add this, give it a color. Give it a different color. And now we have these various layers combined all together. Let's bring this up more. I want to see it clearly. Okay. And one more thing I'd like to do is it's very important to convey motion, complexity, and give it a feel that there is an energy or something moving, to have different layers, different things combined together. Not smooth integration, but like sudden difference between them. So for example, this guy, okay, that moves that much, like that, I'm gonna change it to have a lot more repetition. And let's stretch it. It's too much already. And this is doing nothing. Okay, so let's do $F. If we divide it by 1, nothing happens. And I'm going to multiply it by 3. I want it to move very, very fast. 4. 2. Okay, cool. And I'm going to change the noise to get better pattern. Yeah, I want to get some sharp lines in between. Something like that. And let's connect all these. And let's give it a different color. Let's say black this time. And I want to scale it down a bit, so I'm going to transform this sphere in for these points only. Okay. And let's change the color. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to increase the point. Right now, all the layers they have the same point count. And you know what? I'm going to add one more layer. Where is this guy? This guy I'm going to copy. And I'm going to give it some rotation. Too much rotation. Try 10. Try the other angle and divide this by 4. Yeah, cool. And let's add this. And I'm going to copy this scatter node because I want to change the seed so the points are not overlapping on top of each other. Okay. Let's hit play. And take a look. Cool. So you can see we have the various layers, and again in the viewport it's tricky to judge all this, and but we can see the fast moving layer, the vertical one, and the blue one rotating. And this is I cannot stress how important this concept is to layer different particle system, different particle system, each with a very slight modification to add complexity to the main layer, and then you can add another thing that is completely different. Okay, and that will create even more complexity. So the last thing I want to do is I'm gonna copy this, and I want to show you, because I'm liking this a lot, I'm gonna show how to do something else. Let's do a tube. Let's change it, and let me template this. Okay, let's create that. All good. I'm going to copy the same thing, and we need that UV coordinate. Cool. Let's create a color to make sure we have the correct data. We need to change this to an earth surface. Okay. So we have the tube, a tube at the center. I'm going to give it a completely different color. I'm going to merge this in. Okay, and it's hard to see, but with this effects, we can create something like an energy inside this core. And obviously we do need to do a lot of compositing to get the effects that we need, the look depth that we need, and this is part of the workflow of doing effects like this. So let me show you one more thing. So we talked about the remapping, and once we remap, let's say any input from 0 to 10, we remap it from 0 to 1. We can use this with a ramp. Again, I'm going to talk about this more next week, or the one after, but we can take a value that goes between 0 and 1 and plug it through this ramp, and then use this ramp artistically to control how that curve, what happens to that curve. So we can give it a linear input like that from 0 to 1, and then remap it in Houdini so that we change, for example, instead of going to 0 to 1, it goes up to 0 and 5 and then stops, and then goes for 0.5 to 0.75 and then comes back in. So we can do something like this, or we can take the curve and it goes linear. We can change it to go like this. Okay, and what we can do with this is, for example, this layer here, or this layer here, you see it's black at the top. We can take the color, this Y, and let's plug in a ramp. And this time I'm going to use a float ramp. There's two types, either color or float. I'm going to use float. I'm going to push this up. Now we have the same result, or we can change it like that. So now it's 0, 1, and back. And now we're fading the top and bottom. And this is very cool because we can use it with all the layers. We don't want to show them everywhere. So let's plug this in. Okay, and let's take a look at the color. So now it's visible there, and we can change it to be visible in the center and turn it off here. And we can move these points to have it only be visible during that segment only. Something like that. Now the color is overriding that, so let's multiply this by the color that we want. Multiply constant. Let's add a multiply and promote this. double click and we can choose the type of what we want to multiply with, and this time it's a color. Change the color, and the reason it's not working is because the first input is the ramp, which is setting the multiplication to float type. We need to invert that so it keeps the color. Okay, so for example, that let's do this. How much points we have? 3. Yeah, that's good. Let's copy this, the point scale. Let's go up, make sure we have geometry, and let's set this to 0.1. Let's go back up, look through the camera. Oh yeah, and looking from the top as well. The effect is also very, very interesting. So we'll do a couple of renders. Let's do a test from the top. Then let's look at it from the front. Cool. And the idea is we need to render these passes preferably separate so we can see them nicely and do further and be able to process them in comp as well. So this is from a far away view, and if we zoom in, we're going to start seeing the point itself. We're going to see the points, all the points. Let's do something like this. And unfortunately, there is no solution to that. It depends on the shot and the camera placement. You may have to change various things to account for to increase the point count to match what you need. So let's set this to, let's multiply it by 10. Let's multiply this by 10. And this guy by 10 as well. Maybe more. Let's do 2 million there. And let's do another quick render. And one more thing that we didn't do that is very, 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 very important, which is to trail and compute the velocity for this. So let's do that. Plug in the trail, set to compute velocity. This is the result. I think the points are too close to the camera, that's why we're seeing like that. So let's move out a bit and do another render. Again, please do not do rendering at this point. I just want you guys to get comfortable with the SOP, creating geometry, manipulating it using SOPs and whatever is available in VOPs. I'm doing some color correction here to try and bring up more details, that's all. Okay, looks very, very interesting. There is definitely tons of details. Let's move in, and I'm gonna lower the point size, 0.05. Cool. And you can see all these details. I'll do a test render with a couple of frames so you guys can see it. Okay, let's do a test render here. And this is the scale of this effects is not very clear at the moment. This could be a shield surrounding a city, or it could be a shield surrounding a character, or the scale is not yet defined, and it depends on the shot and the effects you're working on. You have to tweak various things, primarily the scale. If this was bigger, I think I wouldn't go and show the points. I would increase the point count quite a lot. and I think there is a point hitting the camera directly that is preventing us from seeing. So I'm gonna zoom out, or maybe zoom in. Let's make sure, yeah, we're seeing a test pixel. Cool. So if we look at the red, green, and blue, there's a lot of data that we can work with, and yeah, I think this could end up being some really cool effects if we take it all the way and finish it. Now let's see. Let me show one more test with this, and I want to multiply the motion blur factor, so I'm gonna dive inside, and here the velocity scale, I'm gonna increase it by 4 because I like the stretching effects. I like to get the points to stretch as much as possible, and I think the point size I'm gonna increase back to 1. Let's see what we get. I've not, just to clarify, I've not prepared this effects. Everything I'm doing is live. I could run into problems, and we'll try to fix them, and hopefully you guys learn from that. So if any of that happened, I do apologize. I'd like to do things live so you guys see the full workflow instead of just editing it and making everything look perfect, because it's far from that in reality. What's happening? Okay, so it looks like Mantra didn't kick off yet. So let's hit render. And what I wanted to talk about next is we can use this technique with the splines and everything in all kinds of scenarios. For example, I can create a circle, set it to NURBS open, and let's do 180 so we get just an arc. I can copy this, add a transform node, rotate it like that, and then we can merge these two guys and skin that geometry, and that will give us a surface that we can use to do all kinds of stuff. I can copy this and do another one in between, and we need to make sure the order is correct, so I'm going to move that up, and you can see now we're getting a curved surface. So you can you can use any way to create any approach to create the surfaces, and use the UV generation, the advantage of the parametric surfaces, the NURBS surfaces, to get a perfect UV coordinate that you can use to drive the noise and pretty much anything like that. So let's see what's happening. Looks like it's rendering, but it's very, very slow. I think the velocity may have been too much. Yeah, the velocity is too much. That's why it's taking a lot of time to process it and to start rendering, because that it expands the amount, the radius or the size the render is going to take in workspace, and that takes a lot of time to compute. But you can see we're getting some amazing details with just simple points. We didn't do anything fancy. Now, what I'm going to talk about is next is some animation on how to convey the purpose of an RNG, or give it a character or a feel. But before I do that, I wanted to give you guys some ideas about the assignment. So you can create any kinds of any kind of effects like this. We can, for example, create a geometry. Let's do this. let me think. You can create any kinds of NURB surface, deform it, or any silhouette, and then use that to add noise and have various amount of movement happening to that. What I would like you guys to explore is this. Let me copy these guys, paste them. And let's lower the point count so it's faster to work with. Let's turn this off. Now we talked about this noise. We used something called anti-alias noise, but in reality Houdini has a lot more. There's the noise flow, curl noise, flow noise, periodic noise, turbulent. The unified, don't use that at the moment. Don't use Voronoi or Worley or periodic Worley. They don't generate 3D vector, and this is basically a combination of all the noises. So we don't need to use that. I want you guys to explore these guys, these noises, and the pattern that you can get from these varies a lot. So I'm going to use the curl, for example. Let's connect that, and look at that. We are getting something completely different now. Let's increase the point count. Okay. And let's lower the magnitude. Set this to 30, 30, and 30. Okay, something like that. And this is a very unique, different pattern noise as well that we could use. You can see that it's slower. Obviously, my machine is rendering on the side, so that adds to things. But yeah, we can explore all these patterns and try to use them. Okay. The other thing that we could do is, with this noise, we can compute the length of this, because it gives us a vector that can go in the negative range. We don't want to use that in the color, so we can compute the length of the noise itself. And right now it looks like it's very weak because this is only 0.1. And so let's multiply it. Let's add a multiply by a constant. I want to see it in the viewport. It's not changing. Okay, let's try the length of this. Oh, sorry, I was connecting it to the color. Okay, let's go back to square one. Cool, so it's working. This guy is working, and you can see we're getting a cool variation, a cool pattern. This is more for later, but you can take this guy and we can plug in a ramp, a color ramp. Now, instead of using the float, we can use a color ramp, and it will take this black and white map and we can change the colors. So let's make it dark blue in the center and bright there. And we can create some really cool variation with this. Let's do that, and let's give this another variation, another tone. I see there, just a tiny bit. And the range is, you can see all the colors are here. It means that our input goes between 0 and 1, or probably 0 and 2, and it needs to be remapped properly. So let's expose the offset and frequency, and let's go up and play with the offset. Not that one. Okay, let's try $F divided by 10. And now we have some cool noise flowing through. And the other thing, we could use the color and multiply it by this ramp. So let's do that. Let's multiply it. Multiply this by this ramp, and now we're multiplying it. And I want it to be visible only at the bottom area. I'm gonna flip this so it moves upward, and let's set this to 1. This to 1. And I'm gonna hide this. I'm gonna move this all the way here so it's not visible through the entire range. We can delete the points. Okay, and let's change this. We have different curvature that we could use to control the fall off, and now we have just a bottom section going up, and we can transform this, for example, like that, to have, for example, a character. Oh, that's very cool. We have a character, for example, protected by this shield. Some kind of shield effect. Okay, let's see what we have here. It's still going, and these are all the layers, and you can see you're getting some really cool renders. Very nice and beautiful abstract art. Alright, thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.